welcome back to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. My name is Charles, and with me today, as always, is my lifelong friend and co-host, Dylan.
I'm ready to talk some fantasy with my friend, Charles.
I am ready to talk some fantasy with my friend as well, Dylan. But before we get into any conversations around fantasy, we first need to issue an apology. You know, today, it's no secret based on the title, we're talking about one of our favorite fantasy universes, the First Law universe by Joe Abercrombie. We are, of course, talking about Leodan Brock, a full-on character study of the man. But before we do that, while we have the attention of our First Law fans, we need to issue an apology statement. You know, our fans that are First Law fans.
Yes. Do you want me to do the apology?
I mean, Charles, I think this is yeah, I think you should.
Okay. Well, you know, we're speculating on if there had ever been a point of view character, like a main point of view character in the First Law universe that had received a repeat point of view in a different book. And while I did astutely, I like to think, point out that Kernan Crawl does get point of views in both the heroes and then in the short story in Sharp Ends, I failed to mention that Shy South, one of my favorite characters, I don't know if that's actually fair to say.
But you're such a champion for Red Country.
I'm a champion of Red Country. Exactly. That's kind of where my head was at there. And I do really like Shy. And there's just so many fantastic characters in First Law. But anyway, onwards with the apology. Shy South does have a point of view in Sharp Ends as well, in addition to her being a main point of view in Red Country. Controversially, my favorite of the standalones. Always the least favorite every time we do any sort of vote of the three. But anyway, yes,
we are sorry. You know, we take great.
And thank you to the listener that pointed this out. I did not figure this out on my own. I'm not sure if you want me saying your name on here, so I won't. But if you do want a shout out, we'll give you one in the next character study by name.
For sure.
Anyway,
yes.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes, thank you. You know, we take great pride in our knowledge of the First Law universe. We take great pride in the audience that we have, you know, brought into the discussion of our First Law discussions. There's so many great, wonderful First Law fans out there. We've had the privilege of interviewing Joe Abercrombie. We have arcs of the wisdom of crowds. Okay, we take this very seriously. So to have missed...
Are they still arcs?
They will always be arcs.
Released for over a year.
They can't take that away from us. They can't take that away from us.
At some point, do they cease being an arcs advanced review copy?
It will always be advanced.
Is it advanced reader copy?
I think it's a review copy, but I don't know.
Advanced review copy?
I don't know. I just read them. So, yes, any other series, we would have let this go. But to our First Law fans, we owe you a deep apology, even though I feel like this is mostly Dylan's fault. He was the one that was kind of pushing this did you know POVs aren't repeated narrative, and I was like, I don't know if that's true. I feel like maybe it is because you're kind of leading me to think that it is. I wasn't willing to kind of put my reputation out there, but there it is. So hopefully you can forgive us and we can move on. You know, we said we were going to keep this episode to an hour, so we're going to have to give that a try.
And we've spent the first 5 minutes apologizing for...
But it was important. We had to do it. Shy South, you know, we love Red Country here on FTF, so we just wanted to make sure we gave her some respect, you know, put respect on that name. And maybe a future character study right there, Shy South. You never know. She's eligible. For sure.
We haven't done any for the standalones.
We kind of...
You know who should get... Okay, we'll save this for back, behind the scenes, but you know who deserves one is Shivers.
Shivers, that will be more than an hour to go, because he's everywhere.
Yes. In every freaking... I mean, except the Blade itself. I think he shows up in Before They Are Hanged.
Oh, yes, Count the Winters.
Every single book besides... Oh, God. We're going to end up issuing another apology on this. It's like, actually...
Let's chill with the definitive statements here. It has been a year since we've read the first Law Universe books, so we're not as up-to-date on those as we are with the
I think
Age
I'm
of
right
Madness.
on this one. Let me know if Shivers is not in any of the books. And by the way, I don't want to backtrack too much, but Sharp Ends, to what extent? It's not, they're short stories, so it's not like he's ever repeated in a main novel, a main point of view. So
yeah,
my general point, maybe I was technically incorrect. My general point that we don't get these repeat point of views in later novels in the trilogy. That holds up.
Yeah.
But anyway, we should really get into the actual topic of this episode, which is character study. Is that what we're calling these now? Of Leo Dan Brock.
The Young Lion.
The guy, the Young Lion. The guy goes through a pretty incredible arc. Oh, do we not give a spoiler warning?
I don't think so.
About this.
No, we should probably give one. I don't think we've spoiled anything yet.
I wonder if we've spoiled
except Shivers.
But we just said Shivers is in every book. But yeah,
just put the spoiler warning out there.
It could be worse.
I'll put it in the title and the description and all that. So.
Yeah, if you haven't yet read all the First Law universe and you don't want anything spoiled for you, then now is a good time to turn this down in your headphones and go catch up with the First Law universe, because we're not going to hold back when it comes to spoilers for any of those books there.
That's right.
Okay.
Man, something stuck with me, Dylan, from our Wisdom of Crowds discussion that you had said that I thought was so true, and kind of goes for a lot of... we've kind of made the same sentiment for other characters in the First Law universe before, but especially in Leo's case, this is a case in where a person goes through character development and is kind of just as bad as they always were, just in different ways, and that's their development. They didn't grow up bad and then become good, or be good and then get corrupted and become bad. They were just kind of a dick in one way, and now they're a dick in another way. It's just but it's changed, and the change was super fascinating, and that's what makes Leo so unique in the Age of Madness, is because other characters go through lots of changes too, but Leo's is the most fascinating because you don't necessarily want to root for him or cheer for him, but you don't hate him. You don't despise him as a character either, even though he does some of the more
I kind of do
dickish things towards the end. Well, you're an Orso stan.
I kind of I think I despise Leo. I would say he might be the character I most despise in of the point of views. Okay. No, of the point of views in in at least the Age of Madness. I don't know who would beat him out there.
I don't know. I mean, you have Savine right there with him.
She's not as bad.
Yeah.
By the end, anyway.
I guess it's Savine for some reason wins you over sometimes. She does have that hesitation around doing horrible things. She wanted to spare Orso. She wanted to, actually give an honest go at governing the city and all of that. So you kind of give her a little more slack than Leo, who by the end has no problems seizing his moment, and that's a lot of the theme of the last book for him. It's I'm not gonna let an opportunity slip past me again. I'm gonna jump on it when the moment it presents itself. I'm not gonna say no. and that's kind of what he does when he betrays Orso. And so he's willing to do these things now after he's been, like, his body was destroyed in Trouble with Peace, and it was great to watch him kind of turn into a Galacta-light example. But he doesn't have any of the redeeming qualities of Galacta. He's not self-aware. He's not clever. He's not funny. He's just like mean and crotchety.
Those first two, he you might be able to call him self-aware and clever by the end.
Yes, that's fair.
By the last book, but he starts off. He's also just a bigot, which never goes away in this book. It starts with he's like xenophobic. He's also homophobic, but obviously that's
Repressed.
more complicated because he's clearly repressed, and he's at the very least like attracted to men. I think in addition to women, like it does seem like under the right circumstances he can be sexually attracted to women. Like he needs Savine to beat the crap out of him, but for some reason that does it for him. Well, Abercrombie's characters sometimes have very interesting like sexual fetishes, like and quirks and stuff. Like,
that's a memorable one.
Leo is far from an exception here, but
it's fascinating how Abercrombie throughout the whole series too, talking about just his like repressed nature. Like he comes so close to being like, oh, like I might be attracted to men, but he never ever entertains it. He's like, oh, that's weird that I feel like aroused right now. That's odd. And then he like never breaks through. And even Savine is like suspicious at times and everything like that. But
by the end she knows for sure.
But even he like,
I mean, she has that conversation with Gerund, where she's like, hey, you know, I'm gonna need smart people on my side like yourself, and I mean, you know, if you were to help me out sometimes, like far be it from me to stand in the way of like your very close relationship with Leo. Like, and he's like sweating. He's like when they're out fencing in the Wizzo crowd. So,
but Leo never.
She knows for sure, but. It's that genius of Abercrombie in sticking so tight to the point of view of someone who is, you know, he was brought up to be homophobic, to be xenophobic, I think, as over in England. I would say they're probably more backwards than like you're going to get in the Agrion. So... You're dealing with someone who's, I guess, very much invested in not being gay, and how that shows up. That shows up for real people in the real world all the time, in the way that it shows up for Leo here as like this homophobia that is generated through repressed. Repressed urges, and then this complete inability to see things that seem so obvious from the outside. But he's got those blinders on.
He does, and that's a lesson he had to learn the hard way too. And that's what I kind of want to take a step back for a second and go to the very beginning here, with A Little Hatred, with where we are like introduced to Leo Danbrock. The son of Finri, by the way, who I've always liked as a character. Like the heroes, probably my favorite standalone. I feel like that was kind of a tipping point for like some of Abercrombie's things he'd been workshopping for a while. Things like the little people that we get in Age of Madness. We start to see him experimenting with here.
He's got casualties.
Yeah, casualties. And just Finri as a character, even, I think, is another one of those that he was trying new things. And, you know, Finri still managed to stick out in Age of Madness, but So Finri, and then we remember from the heroes that she was married to Herod den Brock, and so funny to mention, Lord Brock from the first Law trilogy was basically going to be king of the Union until Baez and Glokta stepped in, and Baez weave this whole.
Well, at that point, I think just Baez. At that point, Glokta was working to secure
votes for the Archlector.
Votes for the Archlector.
Right, he would have never secured votes for Jazal, but right, it was Baez until literally they were voting, and he was standing a really good chance of winning, and otherwise would have won if it wasn't for Baez in the 11th hour. Revealing, air quotes, revealing Jazal being the bastard son of the king, and then that causes Lord Brock
to by defect. The way, it's hilarious that now the infant king of the Union is it's basically two bastards in the lineage to get right, because Sabine's a bastard of a bastard, right? So it's and the kid was almost a bastard, but they got married while Sabine was pregnant, so it's almost a triple bastard situation,
right? And then you have the descendant
and none of it is even related to, none of it is actually related at all to to the king in any way. So
unless you consider the king before Jazal, because then Jazal became king, and it's technically those kids are now the grandparents of Jazal, or the grandkids of Jazal, which is kind of funny. But Jazal is not even a truly part of that bloodline. And then you have Lord Brock, who was almost king and then wasn't, and now they came together, and here now they run the Union by the end of the Age of Madness. So I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of bring these characters back in, because the Brock family was disgraced, right? They sided with the Gurkish once they lost the vote to become king, and they lost, stripped of lands and titles. And then now you have Leo, 2 generations later, who is obsessed with the stories and of honor. I remember, one of the things I love about our Joe Abercrombie interview is when we were kind of talking to him about Leo and about the wolf also, was this idea of these younger characters in the beginning. They have this sense of grandeur and honor and noble fights in battle, and they idolize the Bloody Nine, right? They sing the songs of the Bloody Nine. It's anytime someone idolizes the Bloody Nine, you have to kind of think twice about their mental capacities. And then Joe was oh, you're kind of right. And then we could see the wheels turning in his head. I'm oh.
He said, I think explicitly, I think he was that's a good point. I think I have to start building some nuance into that and doing that.
So if there's another First Law book and there's a nuanced memory of Logan Ninefingers, we got to take credit for that. Obviously,
I'll take full credit for that, and if we ever get First Law in space, because I also tried to inception that into Joe's mind. So either of those, full credit.
Such a great moment, and then Joe was so receptive and kind to indulging our craziness. But that was part of it, this idea in the beginning, especially in A Little Hatred, they're ride into battle and win glory for the house, just like Logan Ninefingers fought the Feared or whatever, and you're oh, okay, he's one of these guys in the beginning, just a total meathead kind of, with Finri kind of mothering him. It's very fascinating. She's she's governing basically, while he's just charging off into battle, and he's recklessly charging into battle, but he's really good and he kills a lot of people. But this constant Finri constantly trying to educate him and tell him what to do, and she's super knowledgeable. She could have taught him so much, and he could have been so well learned, but it took him getting blown to bits by a cannon at the end of The Trouble with Peace to learn some of these lessons that had been attempted to be drilled into his head his whole life. So I don't know, that's another part to me that fascinates me about Leo den Brock, that pretty traditional introduction to like this tropey, oh, I'm a like annoying, like privileged, strong like guy, to okay, I've been kind of soured by reality and seen the bitterness of life, and I've learned how to like survive in this grim dark world, and that just makes me now a horrible person but a powerful one. So it's like weird how he learned his lessons kind of thing.
And the similarity between the way that he learns his lessons and the way that Glokta learned his lessons. He's actually preposterously like Glokta in so many ways, because Glokta was just like how Leo was at the start of his, his, I don't want to say start of his life, because obviously when Glokta was a colonel, he was this guy who just was in love with himself, had so much hubris, and then he was tortured by the Gurkish, and he turns into this clever mastermind, so much so that he even comes up on top of Baez,
right,
in the end of this series, which is shocking. Right. But yeah, Leo follows a very similar trajectory where he is one of those guys, as you say, Charles, who is worshiping the Bloody Nine, all these other guys, and then he's really smacked by reality when he's injured to the point of like losing a leg and more. And then I almost want to say he comes into his own, but it's similar to what we were saying before about how Abercrombie's version of character, quote unquote, growth is very different from other folks. I don't even know if development is appropriate. Character change. He goes through this intense character change to become, I would say, clever, self-aware, like we were saying earlier, and he definitely is willing to seize his moment, like you were talking about too.
Right. It's interesting to see. I also, you compared him to Glokta, which is so brilliant, because there's even that scene like towards the very end, a Savine POV chapter towards the very end of Wisdom of Clouds, where it's like click tap grunt, click tap grunt.
Yeah.
Like people say you marry your fathers, and Savine never would have believed it. Something like that, which was like a reference to like Glokta's first chapter of this click tap grunt kind of motion. And it's the same. It mirrors, and that's a direct comparison, very deliberately by Joe, to say, look, this is like how sometimes the world just chews idealistic people like this up and creates these hardened guys that like are capable of doing some of these really brutal things, like change the course of a kingdom, but just because they've lost all pretense of whatever kind of honor they need to stick to or code they need to stick to, when they can just act in their own best interests. And that was a really great moment at the end. In the beginning of the Age of Madness, though, another character that I think we have to compare him to is Stour Nightfall, and they go through very similar paths as well. And they even are almost like friends in a lot of ways. They both idealize war stories. They're both born into these positions of being commanders in battle, and they're both very proficient in combat. So they have these very similar ideas of grandeur about themselves, and they have that famous duel, and then they partner up together. Where Stour Nightfall ultimately ends up, there's that great line from Clover where Clover goes like, you didn't earn your name, it was given to you. Like, you didn't earn any of this, you're pathetic. Like, why would anyone choose to follow you? Like, you didn't learn your lessons the hard way or whatever. And then he's killed, taken prisoner, and then eventually killed. And then Leo kind of goes through the same thing. It's almost like you need to face some of those critical failures to change. Like, you could have someone like Finri as your mom to give you any information you could ever know, but it's not until you critically fail that you're able to look at your own faults and change. And that's what Abercrombie does a lot with his characters. Like, they have these obvious things about them, and they only are shown it and change when they're faced with these harsh realities. Or I like to use failures because Abercrombie said he studied human failure as his thesis for his bachelor's in psychology. So I'm always thinking of these critical failures, right? So these characters face these huge failures, and how that can be a character developing moment for someone by going through something like losing a battle, or getting maimed in battle, getting humiliated in battle. Where the lamb eats the lion, kind of a humiliation. Mm-hmm. And but when that happens, it's always not like, it's not a good thing to have that happen to you. So that comes with its own baggage. So really interestingly balanced by Joe Abercrombie there. So I always like to compare him to Stour Nightfall too, for those failure reasons.
Yeah, I think Stour never really got the chance to learn his lessons. I don't think he was really capable of learning any of it, but once he got captured and maimed, he's basically just kept in a cage until he's murdered.
Cries like a baby,
so
begs for his life.
So he didn't have the chance to rise to the occasion, but I also think he starts with a level of maliciousness that Leo doesn't have that at the beginning. That gets beaten into him. Mm-hmm. And because he starts off almost naive, and in a lot of ways I guess he believes in like the idea of nobility, like being a noble person and trying to do what's right. He has that at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then it's like interesting to think about how much of Leo's quote unquote development into this, I think, even way worse person than he was at the start, how much of it is his fault and how much of it we can say is him being a victim of circumstance. Mm-hmm. I think that I'm far be it from me to be a Leo apologist, but trying to give him his fair shake. There's so many instances in The Trouble with Peace, especially, which is, we believe, a masterpiece and the strongest novel in the entire First Law universe, where Leo, he's kind of led by the tail, if you will. I should have said the young lion is led by the tail, if you will. And he's tricked. Isher is convincing him all along the way of all these false injustices and whatnot to try to get him to foment rebellion. Mm-hmm. Right? We have Lord Wetterland, who's just a garbage person and a rapist and a murderer, and Leo's not really plugged in on this situation. You have Isher telling him like, "Oh my God, the injustice of
also doesn't how have they've treated him." The mental fortitude to understand the complexity of what was happening in the court. Right? It's like, well, who cares? Like, she was a peasant, he's a noble. What's the problem? And it's like, yeah, well, he did something really bad in front of witnesses. It was like
he doesn't believe it happened. Right. He doesn't think it. He believes he was false. He believes that Wetterland was falsely accused. Because I think even him being a noble, like, I think Leo would before him being executed.
He kept saying it was a disgrace to even bring him to trials, that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the ways that Isher pitches the closed council as being extremely corrupt, which might not be entirely untrue, And the plan is supposed to be in Leo's head that they're going to basically just oust the closed council. They'll leave Orso as king. And then between Isher and Savine working behind his back, like Savine,
Right.
after every meeting that Leo is having, like comes in, Leo leaves for whatever reason. Like, you know, at one point she like fakes having like issues with her pregnancy, and he runs out, and she's just like, okay, let's talk about what's actually gonna happen.
Right.
And it's all like Leo's gonna be on the throne, and she was gonna betray Ricka, all this really bad stuff that was actually Savine who initiated it, or Isher who initiated it. And almost all the way through The Trouble with Peace, Leo is in his head in the right, and it's not maliciousness that's causing him to do all these things. It's naivety, ignorance, and maybe a little bit of battle lust.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
more than
The battle
a little
lust
bit
for
of battle
sure.
lust
It's
is,
interesting to see how many people.
Trouble with Peace, by the way. Sorry, go on.
No, what about
I was
Trouble
just
with
gonna
Peace?
say like the quote that Trouble with Peace comes from. Let me actually get it right. But it's like the trouble with peace is the warlike man attacks himself.
Right.
I actually got that right. And I think there's definitely a lot of that going on with Leo too, but a lot of what's going on with him is he's being tricked.
Yeah, and almost everyone tries to take advantage of him, like from his own wife. Celeste Dan Huygen, remember, tries to, like, successfully, by the way, put a wedge between Leo and Savine by being like, oh, Savine and Orso were lovers. Didn't you know that? And he's like, what? Of course, Orso inviting him to dinner during the battle to stall for time and making all the jokes about the fish and the cooking and this and that. Then, you know, King Jappo, one of my favorite scenes is the two interviews side by side with King Jappo.
Yeah.
Not interviews, but like meetings with King Jappo, like
Yeah.
the Leo one, which was disastrous, and then the Orso one. So like constantly Leo is being played the fool, and he falls into the trap almost every single time. And it gets to the point by the end of Wisdom of Crowds, which is crazy because he's like, people love me. Like, I talk and everyone claps. Like, why am I getting treated so disrespectfully? You know, that's something he could never quite figure out at the beginning. You know, it's like everyone's trying to pull a fast one on me. I'm just trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to do the noble thing. And, like, I'm here for glory and this and that, but meanwhile I'm just getting taken for a ride at every turn. And I think when he finally wakes up to that is part of his development into the guy that ultimately betrays Orso. I'm always just reminded of how he's got the, you know, he won against the Northmen in the first book, A Little Hatred, and he's like sharing the triumph with Prince Orso, and everyone likes Leo and doesn't like Orso. But, you know, Leo's got that. And then by the time you get to the last book, they talk about the poorly balanced golden sword with the lion on it that Orso gave to Leo, and Leo has. It's like the ornamental sword. He's like, the balance is shit. You know, it's a terrible weapon. Like, it was just like a funny, just another thing that's like, eventually Leo's like, why am I holding on to all of this? It's like, enough. He just stops caring about that stuff towards the end.
Yeah, he does. All the pomp and circumstance definitely gets beaten out of him, and he becomes ruthless and even Machiavellian.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the quote, I found it. It's actually a Nietzsche quote.
Ooh,
which is
Nietzsche.
Interesting. I think Abercrombie he said something along the lines of like, I like my quotes to be from men who are, or people who are like really smart and really dead. Like, it's so from a copyright perspective, he's like, Nietzsche's not going to sue him. So the quote is, "In times of peace, the warlike man attacks himself." So
nice, you got it.
Yeah. So anyway, Charles, I would like to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you're softer on Leo than I am. How much do you view him as a victim of circumstance, and how much do you view him as just like a bad person?
I mean, there's a lot of qualities about him that I don't like. His bigotry and his homophobia and this and that, not the most admirable of traits. But at a certain point, you have to be like, is he wrong? Like, is what he's doing any worse than what anyone else is doing? We like Orso because he's self-deprecating and this and that. But at the end of the day, it's like Leo has the opportunity to become king, and he does it pretty quickly and efficiently. And all he has to do is get Orso off the map. And at this point, no one even cares or likes Orso anyway. So it was an easy enough thing to do to get rid of him. And so at that point, then he's king now. And it's like, look, I'm king. I win the game.
Well, he's not king.
Well,
it's not.
That's
king.
What makes that last chapter, the villains, so good. It is when Leo realizes how like powerless he still is, and like kind of how they have like this standoff with Savine, but he secures the throne for his family, for his house. He wins the Game of Thrones at the end because of basically all he had to do was stab a guy and then hang Orso, and he's won essentially. And the public loves him because he's, he becomes eloquent and he's able to give these speeches to the people and win over the court of public opinion, which it's funny that Leo is the one that has the command over public opinion when no one in power listens to him at all. It kind of just another one of those scathing things that Abercrombie was able to write into this world that I love so much. But it's like, Leo's the one that's the voice of the people. He's the man of the people. And meanwhile, everyone is just like who cares? It's just making a fool out of him at every turn. It's like you spent all your energy in becoming the man of the person. Meanwhile, Savine just negotiated the whole kingdom away from you and you can't do anything. So it's like...
And Savine becomes more of the woman of the people, even more so than Leo by the end, because she's just so much better. The darling of the slum. She's just so much better at the game.
Yeah.
She's so much more practiced. So Leo's doing all the dirty work, and Savine behind the scenes sets things up where she is the real power until their kiddo comes of age. But yeah, he's outmatched in that between those two in that way.
But what he has that Savine doesn't is like sometimes that like bullheadish quality of just charging in a moment. It shocks Savine sometimes, but he's able to be like, no, we're doing this. Like towards the end, he starts to become a bit more convicted and he becomes a bit more like, I'm doing this and I'm not, going to think twice about it. And that's partially because he can't compete in the clever department anyway. So he's like, I'm not even going to think about it. Forget it. And just like charge through, which we love about Leo. But yeah, I would say, that's why I feel like it's...
Do we love that about Leo?
No, I mean, it's easy to hate Leo, but at the same time, he's like, is he any better or worse than anyone else in this story? Like, I don't know. He hasn't, like... Clover's done, like, just as bad stuff. Clover killed Wonderful, his best friend, like without a second thought.
Yeah.
I mean, he always resented it and got his revenge.
Well, he had plenty of second thoughts. Well, not in the moment.
Not in the
You
moment.
gotta seize the moment.
Yeah, he seized the moment.
But,
exactly,
thought
which
back a
Leo
lot.
had to learn that lesson. But Clover learned that lesson a long time ago. He was like, kill Wonderful, okay. Boop. But it's it's interesting. It's go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up Clover there, so I want to say it's amazing how much being, I guess, a little bit funny and charming and those kind of things, how many favors that does for the way that we perceive these characters. Because it is true. You could easily make the case that Clover is a worse person than Leo. But I don't know. I don't have it in me to really despise Clover. I don't know. It's kind of like...
Right. And then you have like Savine, for example. Like, okay, Savine like stole, she strong-armed a lot of people in business. She's like, how many orphans have I made? Like, and then like factories have I run? And like people that I've forced to live in poverty in my slums or whatever. Like, she has those moments, but she still did that at a level that Leo was never capable. Leo could charge into battle and kill people, but that's about all he can do, and that's contained to like killing soldiers. I'm trying to think of like when Leo did anything like truly dishonorable. Betraying Orso was a big one, but I'm trying to think if there's any others. But I mean, he's not that...
Killing Forrest, which you alluded to earlier. That's horrible. And...
But on the scale of these other
And, I mean, he killed Gorst, bro.
Well, he did kill Gorst, but, that was with Gorst, like, trying to kill him. It was a battle. It was battle. It wasn't, like, an innocent life.
That's not a battle.
But what...
I mean, it was all part of the pursuit of Orso. And, yeah.
I'm not trying to be like a Leo apologist. I'm just saying, like, it's interesting how easy it is to hate him. And, someone like Glokta, who's a torturer and, like, plays with society like it's a game of chess, and we like him. And that's... not right or wrong. It's just interesting. It's how Abercrombie's able to put characters in different lights. Like, Leo's supposed to have that unlikable quality to him, and Orso is supposed to have like a more redeemable quality to him, so that when the betrayal happens, it just stings and feels not only shocking but like empty, like anticlimactic, and like it's like, why did this have to happen? No one wanted this. It's like it's that situation that he's able to create by balancing the likability with the characters and also like the actions and honor of the characters too. I think Leo's that fine balance of like, he's acting with the same scheme, honor, integrity. These are all lessons that he learned from other people. Like, other people blasted these lessons into him, and he's become this guy. So the fact that he's also a bigot and stupid, it makes him not likable.
So it's not fair to call him stupid anymore, but it's funny anyway. I think that it's interesting what you bring up there, Charles. I think that some of what helps redeem the characters in our eyes that you bring up, folks like Glokta, is their... I don't know if reluctance is the right word, but that they have second thoughts, that they question the things that they do. Savine is this way as well. I think that Leo, once he's learned the lessons, when you read those chapters, there's just about zero questioning of his behaviors and if they're right or wrong, or if he should engage in them. And I think that's part of what makes Leo so easy to despise. I think if you just step back from our view of being in the minds of these characters and just wrote down on a piece of paper like all the sins of all of these characters, like all our main point of view characters, I would not be shocked if Galacta's list is looking way, way, way longer and worse, just written down on paper. But we see Galacta strive for these little goods, right? We talk about that back in our Galacta character analysis. It was one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, that's a great discussion.
Recorded. That's a good one. But one of the big things we arrived at the end was this idea that when he is second fiddle to Baez, he thinks, okay, maybe we can eke out these little goods. I don't think it even crosses Leo's mind as to why he wants power besides having power in itself.
His pride.
And I think Savine, his pride, he's a
lion after
his
all.
desire to... He is a lion, yes. And I think Savine, at least in her head... she's like, oh yeah, like this has to be worth it. She has that conversation with Vic that drills that into her. She wants to do good. Will she? Remains to be seen.
Right. Maybe she'll make like a hospital or something. She made an orphanage.
Yeah. And she has, she's done some charity work. It's hard to remove
gave
that
away
from
bread.
Her
I mean, she was trying to win over the people for her own self-image, but she still gave away bread.
Right. So, yeah, that's something. I think that the issue is that Leo, he is bullheaded, like you mentioned before, Charles, and I think that hurts him when it comes to how we perceive him.
Right, and you touched on like him just having almost no moral values, yet like he was like running this thing of like honor and integrity and stuff. It's like a weird combination. And then, you touched on that. It's true. He has no interest in doing good. He just has interest in, at the beginning, like glory in battle and this and that. And by the end, it's like he just wants it because he's bitter and doesn't want anyone else to have it. Like he's tired of being played the fool.
Like a child.
Yeah, exactly. He is childlike a lot of times. Even he has his mom come in and like daddy up on him all the time. And you have these moments
where his mom daddies up.
Yeah, exactly. And
I would say she mommies up.
Well, she mommies up and daddies up because poor Herod Denbrock is not in the picture. And maybe growing up without a dad had a negative effect on poor Leo.
Well, he was involved some. But, I guess he was alive some, but he was not an involved father. Leo does reflect on that at one point, and his dad was basically just like, boy shouldn't cry, is like his main influence.
Right. Herod was a bit of a nothing kind of character, like skip the generation.
You called him, off the air before this, you called him a nothing burger.
Yeah, he was basically a nothing burger.
You're like, yeah, we were talking, it's like, you offhandedly were like, yeah, he was kind of a nothing burger. So that's
because I was trying to remember fair. Lord Brock's first name, and I still don't know what it is. I can't find it anywhere.
Herod?
No, Herod is is Leo's dad, and that's what I'm saying. Not him. He's the nothing burger.
Oh, you're saying the original
Lord Brock, like the
Grandpa
original
Brock.
Grandpa Brock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grampy.
Oh,
Brock.
He was a real nothing burger.
No, Grampy almost became king, man, and like.
Yeah, well, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, Charles.
and yeah, I mean, at least he had a huge house and almost won, and then sided with the Gurkish, was a traitor. What are you gonna do? But Baez brought the Brock family back into the fold with through Finry's arrangements and the heroes, but. Now you have Leo just stomping all over the Baez agreement, and Finry's like panicking, and Yurusofa's like, my master will not like this at all. and then Savine's like, you're yesterday's woman, Finry. No one cares what you think. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Euro.
Yeah. I don't know about that. Rest in unrest.
Pieces, am I right?
Rest in pieces.
He did get torn to pieces.
He did. That's a good one.
Yeah.
He's resting in pieces, all right. From those other eaters.
Got him.
From Team Glocta. So, yeah, I mean that's Leo basically. I don't know if there's much more to say about the guy, the lion. Ultimately, the young lion. I guess we could talk about that chapter, the villains. We kind of already did though, and where even then Leo thinks he's won, and then
we talk about that in our original.
We do talk about that too. So it's such a great way to end.
Like at the quotes and stuff too.
Because it's like you give him the victory, like he learned his lesson, he seized his moment, he didn't delay, he won the crown, but he's still kind of powerless, and he's still kind of being outsmarted by others. So that was like a really fun ending to their character. Such a strong like scene between the two, where Leo's just trying to be like, well, we'll vote right now. Who's with me? And then no one votes with him. And he's like, what? This is an outrage? He's like, I will march the armies into the town square. It's like, and I'll starve them. And he's like, this is crazy. You know, it's just like that bullheadishness he never quite shook. And he's having a full-on tantrum. And Savine's like, excuse us for a moment, everybody. It's such a great scene. That needs to be put to film. It would be so good. But just one of those crowning Leo moments. It's like, at the end of the day, here we are. Are we any better? Are we any worse? I don't know. But it's different. it's different now. And that's kind of, I think, the lesson of the wisdom of crowds. It's like they burned it all to the ground to change it. And then now it's changed. But it's only changed in that like a few things are different. Like it has remained to be seen like what good has come from it. And the good thing we did get was with oh god, what's her face? With the long eye. Main character. Rika, thank you.
Wow. Rika.
Where she was able to have that victory feast, and then she was able to hold back her premonitions to enjoy that little moment of the celebration of their victory, which is how the series ultimately ends, which I loved. So it's this idea of like almost like the farce of these grand scale victories, when like how much is it really changing? You're burning down one leader, building up another. It's like really you're just trying to win these moments in between. And I think Leo's not capable, like you said, like Leo's not about these peaceful moments. He doesn't enjoy he doesn't like connect with his family at all, or his children really. And he's repressed in a lot of ways, so he's not embracing these moments, and he's just been defeated and left kind of powerless compared to these other characters that have had to have some sort of like either goodness or death brought onto their lives. That's like the bittersweet endings that Abercrombie's so famous for.
Very bittersweet. I mean, I feel like Leo, his heart started in the right place. I think his heart ended in the absolute wrong place, and he's not even really that satisfied with himself, with his position, with his wife, with his kids, with anything.
No.
And he does feel that resentment. You kind of mentioned this before. He feels that resentment because he was shaped into this by all the people around him. And there's even this moment where he reflects on like, everyone kept my mom, also Savine, like everyone kept telling me how I had to be more ruthless and like seize my moment,
conniving,
naive, and again be more conniving, like because both Savine and Finri were great at playing the game like that. And he's like, as soon as I start actually doing that, now everyone hates me. So
yeah. It's like, I won the flipping throne. Like, what more do you want from me? Now you're not going to feed my army? Like, the indignity. Now I can't even win a vote in my own council, like, after I won the throne, you know? So it's like, yeah, I mean, that's how that works.
Yeah, I mean, in Savine and probably some others' minds, it's like, he's we'll use the phrase yesterday's man already, because he served his purpose for this regime,
Right.
which the thing he was best at was doing what had to be done, those ruthless actions to actually get them the power. But now that they have the power, is there anything that Leo is better at from the perspective of actually being a ruler than Savine is?
Especially in like a perceived peace
so.
time, even though you could still march it. But the whole thing was they didn't want to march on Sapani.
And there's still people better than Leo. Yeah, Leo's not, I don't think, a particularly great commander or anything like Jurand.
No, the lamb ate the lion, bro.
Better equipped. The lamb ate that lion up, bro.
The lamb ate that lion, bro. So... ate that lion up.
Yeah. Okay.
But then the owl ate the lamb, which we all know what that means.
Too soon, Charles.
I'm sorry.
Too soon.
We were having a good moment, and I made it too real. R.I.P. Orso.
Yeah.
He was a real one.
Yeah.
How's the leg, Leo?
He was a real one. Yeah, that's probably how we should close out.
Which is funny because that was his bad leg after his fight with Stour, and then it became his good leg after his tough with Orso.
His only leg, yeah. Right. I do love "How's the leg" as Orso's closing line to Leo.
Mm-hmm.
And
parting words.
It's sad. I mean, and we'll have to give Leo our parting words, I think, very soon. I think we've said most of what we can on him. I know we got some feedback. The reason we're doing Leo first isn't because I was so eager to discuss this character among
over any of the others.
Over any of the others. Because I hate him. But no, I mean, I always enjoy talking First Law, but I just don't think of my own volition I would have jumped to Leo first. I'm still pissed at him. But one of the reasons was because we didn't cover him in the same depth that we did, especially like Orso and Ricka got a lot of pop in our Wisdom of Crowds episode. So it feels like Leo got a little done a little dirty in that one. And we got some feedback from listeners who wanted to hear more on Leo. So I hope you all have enjoyed our discussion here.
Yeah, this one's fun, and it's it's part of that Abercrombieism that I just really enjoy, where he's not necessarily giving us like something that's particularly, I don't know what the right word is, but like you come away like not necessarily super overly enthusiastic about what happened, but that's almost like the beauty of it. It's like these endings, they're kind of like you're not sure what to feel about them, and I think Leo kind of embodies that. He's not a likable character. He's not like, he doesn't progress in any meaningful way, but there is something fascinating about him and something really real about him in this world of grimdark fantasy that is so entertaining. And even if he's not the most like rewarding or endearing character, he's not like Logan Ninefingers, who's got all his funny catchphrases and he does all the heroic things, but he embodies the spirit of this world so perfectly, and that's why I think he merits just a discussion, a little bit more depth. So I'm glad we did get to give him the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't get me wrong, Charles. I think he's extremely well written, and I would say you nailed it there by saying he embodies what the First Law universe is about. And I especially think he embodies what the Age of Madness is about, where you mentioned this before, the idea that folks kind of need to repeat the same mistakes as previous generations because they can't just learn lessons by in Leo's case, like Finry telling him things. Mm-hmm. It's like you end up just learning these lessons on your own anyway, for better or worse. Mm-hmm. And he made a lot of same mistakes as someone like Logan or Glokta whatever. I think that he is potentially the character that defines those lessons more than anyone. So, props to Joe for his willingness to stay committed to that with Leo, for his willingness to, even though I am so angry this happened, still for his willingness to have Leo kill Orso in that horribly, I don't know if ironic is the right word for it, but like, I just injustice.
It's definitely it's unjust what happened for sure.
Yeah, like of having Orso spare Leo, and then Leo, when the situations are reversed, he does not hesitate.
No qualms, that's for sure.
I mean, yeah, it's extremely well written. The parallels to Glokta, like that we mentioned before, I think are highlights of the book and the series. So yeah, I don't want to be down on Leo as a character.
Right.
I think I just like as a person, I find him completely reprehensible, and I don't think a lot of folks
we're not hanging out anytime soon.
Argue with me on that.
We're not going down to Cardati's anytime soon to hang out. Although, I don't know if I want to find myself in Cardati's anymore.
Cardati's guy in general, Charles. It's not how I perceive you, Charles.
No.
But
I was just trying to think of another bar. That's the only one I could think of in the First Law universe that still exists.
Yeah.
That thing will always survive. I'm hoping when we get Abercrombie in space, Cardati's is still there, somewhere in the world.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's had like 60 fires since then, but it's still there. It's the oldest bar in the world.
Yeah. Right.
But, I mean, we're at that hour mark.
Despite the fires and despite... I'm just going to waste time. Despite the fires and despite Gorst's perceived failure in that moment, we got Gorst redemption.
Given to him by
he at least died
by Leo, and he says, "Do you believe in redemption?" And then Leo's like, "I don't give a damn," or whatever, and he's like, "Give it time, you will." So it's like maybe Leo just needs more time,
Right? Maybe we just need to give it time.
And speaking of more time, we don't have any of that.
You're right. Great seg.
So, what's in store for Leo in the future? Maybe he'll get his redemption arc, but for now. Despicable Human Being, very well written. So, with those words being said, what do you say, Dylan? I think it's time to play that sweet, sweet outro music.
Let's get that sweet, sweet outro music pumping, Charles.
All right. Thank you, everyone, one and all, for listening to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. If you like what you heard today, if you love the First Law conversations, let us know over on social media. That's at the FTF Podcast on Instagram and at the FTF Podcast with a number 1 on the end over on Twitter. Now, Dylan, if they like what they heard today and they want to support the show even further beyond following us on social media, what can they do?
Toss 5 stars to our podcast, which you could now do on Spotify. You're just 2 clicks away from making that happen. You can also do it on Apple Podcasts. You can write a review there if you are so inclined. I'll also say, this stuff really does help us a ton. I think, we go through the motions of me saying this all the time, but it means a lot to us when y'all give ratings. We're just this little podcast put together by 2 friends and doing this all on our own here.
On our own.
It's only we have some corporate backing to get this out here.
No
right?
sponsors.
So, and we bring it all to you for free.
For the love of the game.
So, You're right. If we do it for the love of the game, so if you rate us, that's one of the great ways that we can get the word out there about our podcast. It'll help it show up more for people and recommendations and stuff like that. So, we need your help, folks. We need it, and you can do that by tossing
content out there, people,
to our podcast.
Yes,
that was a long one.
Well said. But just listening is already more than
No,
enough.
sorry, I didn't do the thing. Just
give us a likes. Give us a likes.
Also, you could just listen. You could just listen. You don't have to rate it. Just listening is more than enough. But it'd be nice to rate us.
It would be nice to rate us, but you know what? By making it here, you're already an OG. So thank you so much for listening. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, go forth and conquer, friends.